Hello, and welcome to Everyday Strengths. This is the first edition or iteration or the 251st edition of the Dash Podcast. I'm excited to have you and a fellow alumni of Miami University, Mr. Rob Hendricks. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Rob, you're the founder and you're the CEO of He Is Me Institute. You've been out since 2018. For a good amount of time, we were able to cross paths again recently at the Black Male Educator Convening in November of 23. Man, tell the people about yourself, about He Is Me, and how you got to Boston.
Oh, yeah. Well, I start with the end. It was random, pretty much, but kind of calculated. So, like you said, I went to Miami from Cincinnati for most of my life. I was born in Detroit, grew up in Cincinnati since elementary school, went up to Miami, eventually studied education. After my, I think, junior year, I became an education major. Before that, I was a business major. And so that's important because I always had this back and forth between do I want to do business or do I want to do education. So fast forward, I went to grad school in education, was working for the YMCA, and then I was like, I just wanted to move. So that was still in the Ohio area. So I looked up some cities that were progressive and doing work in the education field. And of my short list, Boston was the only one that I'd never been to. So I was like, well, that's the one I'm going to. So I had my one-way ticket to Boston, and that's how I landed here. I thought it was going to be short, but it's been 10 years, and I'm still here. Go ahead.
Shout out to Boston. I'm gonna let you keep going. I didn't recognize like Boston was one of the cities that is very progressive for education. Like one of the first to have like SPED programs and introduce a lot of the progressive things that we
Yeah,
see in education. So nice research there. I kind of stumbled upon that information myself. But continue. How did you come into He Is Me?
yeah. So after 6 years working at the school level, I had a bunch of different roles. My most recent job was an assistant principal, and I'm just seeing year after year how many black male teachers come and go. I see the impact that black male teachers have on students. And then I saw how hard it was for me to get other staff members to see how to support the black male students in the building. So I'm like, instead of me spending all this time trying to convince people about the mindset and how to approach black males, I just said maybe we need more black males in the building in the first place. So that's not the problem. So trying to get further upstream about what the issue is and supporting our young black men. So I launched ESME in 2018, which is my last year at the school. I was able to take it full time in 2019 with a grant from New Schools Venture Fund and 4.0 Schools. So they really gave us the seed funding to get started. And then after that, it's been mostly uphill, but you know how entrepreneurship goes. It's up, down, all around. But the overall, it's an upward trajectory. And here we are through the pandemic,
Yeah.
figured it out, and we still making an impact.
They say you don't have a real business until you've been through some things. So if you
So,
started before the pandemic and you made it through, you've been through some things, man.
and I had my first pilot program scheduled to run in March 2020.
Oh wow,
So
wow,
that tells you everything you need to know about
yeah, that's tough
struggles,
right
the
there.
ups and downs that we had.
That's tough right there. What would you say? So it's been 5 years and some change now that you've been going. What have been some of the biggest milestones that you've experienced and since you started Here's Me?
Some of our partnerships is definitely the big one. What you'll see soon, and probably by this point, you'll see that we have a partnership with the Breakthrough Collaborative, which is a national teaching fellowship for college students. They do the work over the summer. So our partnership with them allows us to provide affinity spaces for the black males that are interested in teaching over the summer. These are all college students or mostly college students. And then we have a couple other partnerships with some colleges and teacher prep programs that can continue how we develop those young black men to become teachers. So I would say partnerships is definitely a big piece of it. And then funding, being able to get funders and donors behind us to make that impact. We are over $2 million in right now, and that's turned to hundreds of Black males coming through our programs. We work with elementary school students all the way up to career teachers. So we think about the whole gamut about how we support Black men to become and remain teachers.
Wow, $2 million and 200 over 200 educators. That's crazy to think about. That's some powerful stuff, man. What when you start, if I go back when I started my first podcast, that was my first kind of entity that I started. I had a 2 bedroom apartment. In the second bedroom, I put some sheets up. The roof was tile, so I put some sheets up in the tile to make it look like a studio. They didn't have these virtual backgrounds, and got me a little mic, man. And I just try to figure this thing
Uh
out. I
huh.
just watch videos. How do you go, sir, from being a school principal to getting $2 million in funding to support 200 Black educators? That seems like a big step. And so I understand myself that you go one step at a time. You bootstrap your way up. But
Yep.
can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some of those phases? Like what was the first phase of just this is what I want to do? Was it I feel like naturally most people just put their own money up or just say, hey, I'm just gonna serve my time. Or did you kind of start off with the hey, I need funding for this. Let me collaborate to make this happen.
Yep. It was the latter. So it started with the grant. So I had just got a job actually at another nonprofit. I was there for about 3 months when I learned that I got a $200,000 grant to start He Is Me. So for about a year, I was typing up concept papers, having people read them, doing my research. But I needed to still work, so I didn't do any programming before funding. So once I was able to get the funding and go full time, I really leaned into what I was good at, what I already knew, which is how to run programs for kids. I mean, that's been my career up to that point. So after I mentioned we were supposed to do our pilot program in that March, but it was all set up. That threw a wrench in everything, the pandemic. So instead of me trying to do something that's not my strengths, I hired some people, some consultants, some contractors to continue some fundraising and grant writing to rewrite our curriculum from the way I wrote it, which was more academic, to be social emotional learning based. So I had a counselor as a contractor come on and we like co-developed that curriculum. And then I did a lot of learning. I said I was always interested in business, so I've already taken many business classes. I had some of that foundation already, but then just learning more about what is it that I don't know about the nonprofit space, about entrepreneurship. How can I take what I do know about business, education, and merge those together to be a business? And then just kind of like stepped it up from there. So our very first partnerships were with K-12 schools. I knew that space real well. And then we got into colleges, and then we got into teacher prep programs, like all these new spaces.
That's powerful. I appreciate saying as well. I didn't want to do what I wasn't good at, and so I hire some people, and that's obviously sometimes you got to bootstrap it to a point. You can't delegate chaos, and so you have to
Right.
put systems in place to be able to delegate things. And you might have to win that contract before you can hire somebody to do it, but that makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, how were you able to stay patient enough to do the research, collect your information? What do you call a concept article, kind of reading and writing? Talking about where that's discipline, I would say. That discipline to kind of not just quit your job, jump
Uh-huh.
ship, and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go figure this thing out. Let me
Uh-huh.
go do that. Where does that patience come from to do this more strategically rather than just I think most people just say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start a nonprofit and start giving stuff away.
hmm It's because I was actually driven for the impact. I didn't want to. I didn't do it so I could have my name everywhere saying he started this thing or to make X amount of dollars. It was because I saw every day what it was doing to our kids. And so for me to actually support them, I had to do my due diligence. I had to do the research. So me jumping ship and just want to start something and like hope for the best. If it don't work, then I'm not making any change. I'm not making any difference. So I needed to figure out not just from my experience. I'm one of many. And maybe my experience was wrong. I don't know yet at that point. So that's when research comes in. And I did see a lot of alignment, but in some ways my story was unique. So I didn't build He Is Me around Rob's story. He Is Me is built around the black male educator story. So I needed to learn that more. I talked to people. I had interviews with students, teachers, school leaders, the hiring departments of districts and charter networks, so I can actually figure out what's going on, so that the programs that we design are for the people. They're not for me. I'm not in the school anymore. It's not for me.
That's good, man. There was a there you I want to go back just a moment. You talked about just being we were talking about being patient in that programming and kind of doing your pilot and hiring people to come in. So there was a video I was listening to. There's a gentleman named Myron Golden, and he
Mhm.
was talking about leverage, and people want leverage and want to have it, but there's risk associated. And so, in order for me to have leverage, I have to have some risk that's associated with it too. So, Rob, it was kind of, as patient as you are, it's kind of risky to just kind of sit back and hold tight and be patient and do your research, sharpen the axe. It's kind of risky to do a pilot program in the pandemic. It's kind of risky to hire somebody, even if you do have some funds to do it, where you kind of answered it in you were driven for this, but I want you to go deeper. Where was the, hey, I'm still going to do it based on all that information?
Well, at that point, it was needed even more because I mean, I talk about March 2020, but May 2020, George Floyd was murdered. So it was even more so after the pandemic had started and the following months made it that much more important. He was already switching to social emotional learning because of the pandemic, and then this situation happens. So I can't now pull back and say now I'm scared because the money might disappear. Because even if I did that one pilot program and ran out of money, that's 20 kids that I just impacted through this program, and I could still go off and get a job and do whatever I got to do to pay the bills. But it's the impact that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true, man. That's good. That's good. In the worst way, I think there's, it's crazy what inspires you to do some things. Sometimes I think, in 2016, and I got another question for you. In
Uh,
2016 or 2017, I ran for office. I was 24 and ran for office in Hartsville, South Carolina. And what inspired me to run was the fact that Donald Trump was elected to office. I was like, wow, like this ain't no politician. Like this guy, that's the negotiator, whatever the case is. Like, if he's going to do that, I'm about to go put my name in the hat here and make some change too. So, there's different things that motivate us. And so the pandemic and George Floyd had a motivator for you to kind of keep pushing. And me seeing, somebody that I thought had no business in the White House getting there made me be somebody that had no business in city council. But I was able to make some change with the people in my community
uh,
and do those kind of things. I want to say for you too, there was a something that I heard when we were at the Black Male Educator Conference, and somebody referenced a book called Jim Crow's Pink Slip. I imagine that you've done some research, maybe not on that book, but I just like this concept of they talked about when integration happened, the black male teacher pipeline disappeared. I'm not as familiar with that component. I'm more focused on workforce development, on
mhm.
emotional intelligence. I have a expansive, civil rights understanding, but I don't hear much research about the education pipeline as related to civil rights. Can you kind of fill me in on your knowledge in that world and why there's so many organizations like yourself, or maybe so few from your perspective, that are working to rebuild this pipeline that's so
Absolutely.
valuable to education?
Absolutely. So when you think about school integration and the people that's in power, in this case, I'm talking about middle class, upper class, white folks. Now their kids going to school with the black students. They're not sending their kids to the black schools. Integration means bringing the black kids to their school. Their school is not about to hire a bunch of black teachers. Those teachers lost their jobs. And so Once they lose their jobs, they got to go work somewhere else. So then over time, they're not having these pipelines and pathways into teaching. And meanwhile, it's being harmful to our students. They weren't welcoming in most of these schools that are now integrated. They weren't trying to support the black students as best as they can or as good as they were being supported at the black schools.
Hmm.
So the relationship that kids start to have with schools started to shift. They don't have positive relationships with schools today. About half preschoolers get suspended, which is already insane. About half of them go to black boys. 90 some percent of disciplinary infractions are called discretionary, which means it's not like in the handbook you brought a knife to school. It means I think you're being disrespectful. It's how I interpret the kid. And so if you got all of these negative interactions with school over time, you don't want to be there. You don't want to go to school, let alone work in a school. So all these things start to chip away at the pipeline to become teachers, and it hit black boys the most. So it's hard. I always use the analogy: if you were in little league, hit the ball, coach yelling at you, and the crowd mad at you because you lost the game, you're not gonna be a little league coach when you grow up. I'm pretty sure. And like it's the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
teacher.
Mm. So man, that's good, Rob. I think that's good, and I think seeing there's a good and a bad with so many things. I heard somebody, and this isn't a stance, but I guess a kind of comparison to look at how deep this runs. Somebody mentioned climate change. Some of the drive for EV globally or alternative power. No doubt that the world is changing, but banning certain fossil fuels and resources globally means that Africa can't access $13 trillion of their own resources. So there's nuance to these conversations. So integration is great. Yes, let's be together. Let's do this all together. But what are we going to do with these excellent teachers that we have in this pipeline? What are we
Right,
going to do with this continent of people that have resources to live abundantly, but you're trying to ban this globally so they can't thrive? So
right.
there's whatever motives and objectives come into play. I'm glad that you and I are in the space to bridge those gaps in our respective industry. Talk to me about some of the programming, or maybe give me the most impactful program to date that you've been a part of through He Is Me.
The most impactful? That's a hard question. I'm gonna
That's it.
say
Gotta put that pressure on you.
yeah, I'm gonna say the I Am King program. That's the one we started with, and it's got different iterations over the years. But the tagline over the past 5 years is black males, either high school or college, they teach the social emotional learning program to younger boys. And the younger boys have spanned from elementary through middle school. And the reason that's been so impactful is A, to my earlier point, we're not saying when you're in this program, you definitely got to be a teacher. There are some programs out there saying, like, we'll give you X amount of scholarship or dollars, but you got to teach for this many years. We're not putting that pressure on these black men to go into these institutions that are not supporting them well. That's not the point. Because so many black males become teachers from organic experiences. I was a mentor, I was a tutor, and I saw my impact. So we try to get the environment there. But what makes it most impactful is the conversations that come up in the I Am King program. So if you got a college black male student, a group of elementary school black male students, and they're just talking about identity and emotions. Like we start off every session with looking at an emotion wheel. Like how often are black males told that they can talk about their feelings, right? And that's what the whole program is about. I remember like probably the third session that we ever did with I Am King. This young man, he was like in seventh grade maybe. He said that he shared things in that space that he doesn't share with his therapist. We're not therapists, but he just felt that level of comfort around black males talking about what's really going on that we're not allowed to show to the world.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow, Rob. That's good. That's a great response. Is that a program that you all are still operating today? You said
Yep,
okay,
yep, still going.
in multiple iterations. That's powerful stuff, Rob. You alluded to your strengths earlier. You know, when do you feel like, or do you feel like you've started to leverage your strengths to keep your programs engaged? Like, how do you utilize what you're the best at to support He Is Me?
Yeah, it goes back to hiring a team. So I don't. This is like the gift and the curse about my position. I don't get to work directly with the people in our programs as much, but I do have a lot of strengths in like the business aspect, looking at the impact, figuring out what that means strategically and how we position ourselves to improve programming, how I could support and develop people who are on the front lines with kids. My last like 4 years in the school, 3 or 4 years in the school, I was an administrator. So a lot of my job has been helping other people impact students. So leaning into those types of things, being able to communicate, I wouldn't say persuade because I never really try to persuade people, but getting people to understand what we do and why it matters. You asked about funding earlier. That's how the funding happens. I don't have to spend a lot of time getting people on board. I talk about what we do and why it matters, and then they get
That makes sense to me. That's good. Well, let's. I want to move us into our this deep dive. You did a wonderful job prepping for today. You already told me some of the feedback and things that you've been considering from your review of the assessment, and I think that's great. You know the what we've just talked about there are so authentic in so many ways that you leverage those strengths to create something from scratch. That's what a business is. The highest form of wealth creation, the highest form of service is imagination because you are creating something from nothing and serving people at the highest order. So
yep,
thank you for that. And
absolutely.
shout out to you for that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. This section here, when I work with leaders and I work with teams, I focus on helping them bridge gaps in their relationships, build buy in, or even reset the culture and climate in communities. And where most cultures, where most consultants, where most programs are focused on pedagogy and curriculum for students, like yourself, focused on Black male educators, I too focus on adults in the building. And
Hmm.
every time that we work with schools, they take a DISC and emotional intelligence assessment. You were so kind to take that here. And just briefly, you were an examiner. I think that makes a lot of sense as we'll see briefly, demonstrating a high degree of follow through. You kind of expressed that in your projects as well as awareness of quality control and direction,
Hmm.
persistent with being very technical in your environment. These are factual and data presented in logical ways. When they're in decision mode, they're good at working in solitary ways and don't have a need for high engagement with others. As a result, may need to be encouraged to share their ideas with the team. So, Rob, I didn't plan on reading that whole thing right now, but I heard you affirming some of those
Okay.
responses. If you could, man, without going through all the details, talk to me what you heard there. 'Cause you made a comment before we started about what you read, and I love to hear kind of how you broke down some of the information that you read in your results.
It actually goes back to an earlier question you asked about being patient with the concept paper and making sure everything is in order because I don't want to go out there to start the business or to start a program or a partnership with half baked ideas or just my excuse me or just my feelings about something. So I need to collect the information as much as I can so that when I do go out there to launch something or improve something, I'm using facts, right? And because I'm using facts, and it's kind of what I was sharing before, it's then hard to change my mind. 'Cause I've done my research. All right. I'm not just jumping out there. I've looked at things, I've read research, I've talked to people, I've tested different ideas. So now I'm ready to go. So that's what makes, for me at least, running this business strong. That's why I can do it in a strong way because I know what I'm talking about before I go out there. It doesn't mean I don't have much to learn. It doesn't mean I won't make a mistake or a misstep. That's part of entrepreneurship. But none of what I do is happenstance.
You do it on purpose. That's part of that examiner. I think that's well spoken. What I say oftentimes is, the assessment helps you put words behind things that you've always known about yourself, but may not be the best at articulating. Kind of knowing that about yourself, that you're kind of an examiner, that you're going to be very thorough. How do you prepare your team for meetings or for projects? Like, do they know? Hey, I got to come correct. If I'm gonna bring something to Rob, let me dot my I's and cross my T's. Let me share this. Like, what are some of the things that your team either explicitly or implicitly does to communicate with you more effectively?
Yeah. The one thing, this was a few years ago, and I actually learned this. I got this wording from somebody else, but there's no such thing as draft form, right? We do that a lot. Like, can you look at this draft? Because once you do that, if I'm writing something that I know is draft, then it may not be my best. So I tell my team, give it to me as if you think this is the final version. And on my end, I build in time for edits and all of that. But if something's due, really due on the 30th, I'm saying it's due on the 20th. And give me your final version of that. So people know to come with their best thinking and their best work first. And then everything that we're doing after that is improving your best, not your 7 out of 10 work. I'm going to improve your 10 out of 10 work. So next time it's even better. So that's one thing. The other piece is I make a lot of resources, templates, documents, like complete this before we come into the meeting. So we're already, even if we don't get a chance to look at it ahead of time, the meeting is not a time for me. Most meetings, that's just not true for every meeting. The meeting is not a time to figure out what you're going to talk about in the meeting. This is when the work gets done. This is when the conversations happen. So, like for example, with my team, we have these we call 2x2 feedback loops, and we got that from the management center. But every month we come together, we give each other two pieces of constructive feedback, two pieces of positive feedback for the other person and ourselves. But we come in that meeting already having thought about that. So one, that makes the meeting shorter. I'll have 30-minute meetings with each of my staff members. And for the whole 30 minutes, we're talking about the actual feedback and not me thinking like, let me think, what is the thing that you do? Like you already took care of that. And
Yeah.
last piece on this, when we talk about evidence, as a requirement for me at least, in the 2x2, any feedback you give, you have to give an example.
Mm.
Because it seems right, or like I kind of feel like when did that happen? Tell me about a time. So I used to do these statement starters like when you did X, the impact was Y. Like fill in the sentence, tell me, because otherwise it's just lip service. It just won't.
That's good. Sheesh, Rob. Do you have, is this stuff all in a manual for your program, or is this more so like just company culture best practice?
It's a combination. Some things are in. We have a leadership manual, and some of it is in there, and some of it is just what we know to expect when we come to certain things.
That's powerful. That's some good stuff. So that's a lot of strategies that you just listed off between setting early deadlines, bring your best work, documents and templates, having example feedback. Those are really solid expectations to keep people productive and kind of moving forward
Mhm.
on the right path. Let me show you this here too, Rob. So on this page here is looking at another part of your assessment results. So we just saw you as an examiner. We have some different ways to look at your DISC assessment data. And I'll show that if we need to, but this is the bar graph. And so this is where I like to get jiggy, so to speak, when we're in those team sessions, because these numbers really speak a lot. And so what I like to look at, Rob, in schools, so we'll look at this information for individuals and for teams. But looking at your natural style, this is how you show up. And so what this shows me is, Rob, you're real flexible. Shows me that you're real chill, that you're real flexible and you're consistent. You're consistently showing up that way. This energy line represents kind of behaviors that we can see. So when you're not at work, we can't really see how outgoing you are or how fast paced and people oriented you are. But you can see a shift in your adaptive style and when you show up at work where you're much more what we call conscientious. You're really in tune with the goals consciously so, as you just listed off some of those expectations. And the same is true for your eye style. There's a greater shift in how much attention you put into being this is people oriented and more fast paced. Can
Hmm.
you talk about what these shifts mean to you and why naturally you may be a little more flexible and adaptable in that work? You show up with the strengths of supporting people and really being a rule driver.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's been true as far back as I can remember. Like, without the disc, this is true. Like, I
Yeah,
always say to people, I can tell you my work schedule 2 or 3 months from now. It's already I know what it is, I know what it looks like. I can't tell you what I'm doing this week. Like, I know whatever happens. I just kinda go with the flow in my natural life.
yeah,
But I know, especially as an entrepreneur, as a leader in general, it's not just me. If I'm not clear about that, then how can my team actually drive us in the right direction? So I need to have a deep understanding about what's coming, what it should look like, how we communicate. Even think about it to that level. I have people who on my team who build and sustain partnerships. If they don't know how to talk about he is me in the way that I would talk about it, then they won't do it any justice. So I have to be very proactive and forward thinking.
mhm,
And then as a leader, no matter what's going on, I'm very transparent with my team when we're going through something challenging or anything like that. And at the same time, it's important to keep people motivated. And people are motivated by different things. So I know each of my staff members as individuals. And part of that's from explicitly asking. Like I remember one time I gave them a little quick assessment that I made up about how do you learn. And then now I do some kind of mix of that. We have lunch and learns every month. I have monthly meetings with each of them. We have team meetings, and they don't look the same because I know some of our team members, you're a processor. You're gonna do a
mhm.
lot of the talking. I'm gonna drop a couple things, but you need to get it all out. I'll be quiet. Another team member, they like to see everything written in a chart. They want me to like drive and push, so I would do that. So part of my role as a leader is to be flexible, but be flexible in a way that is right for that person. I think that's where that I gets so high. Well, that's one of the reasons why that I gets so high when I'm at work.
So Rob, I have a feeling about this is good. You're impressing me a lot right now because what I've seen in my research with well-being, with engagement, with teacher prep programs and things, there's a serious lack in self-management and self-awareness training in these programs,
Hmm.
right? So the fact that you're able to tell me so many of these things matter of factly tells me that you've been working on this stuff. Like you seeing this assessment, this is not new for you. Having this level of depth for feedback. Some people naturally can build some of these skills or put some of these practices in place. It seems to me like you've tried, like you've been intentional about putting some systems in place along with some natural skills that you have in terms of like detail orientation. Can you talk to me about how you have built your skills or if they're yeah, how have you built up your capacity to be able to think about these things and develop yourself personally to be better professionally.
I think that comes from a root of feeling misunderstood. Just thinking about life, especially childhood, getting into adulthood, sometime in Miami, people not quite understanding like what I mean or who I am and wanting to be more clear about that because I'm naturally so laid back and lax. Like people have a thought about who I am or what I stand for. And so I've learned to be more forthcoming with certain things because it is important, even if it's not naturally how I orient. I remember a time when I had done a little bit of research, but I just knew that this was the right thing to do for students. And I got all the pushback from all these people about this not being right. So then I did some deeper research and found like it was this one book that I used and it connected everything that I said to a research point. And I didn't go back and say, see what I mean? I said, look at this research. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, this is a good idea. And that's when I
Mm,
really was like, it's
mm.
important for me, being who I am, to put my natural way of being aside sometimes. Like it's
Wow.
any characteristic of us is a gift and a curse, depending on when it shows up and how it shows up. And so for me, just going through and saying like, "Hey, this is what I think, it's what I feel," that's cool sometimes. But when I gotta move the needle, you gotta come better than that. You gotta do something differently than that. So I've
Sheesh.
kind of got really reflective about why do I think this? Why do I feel this? Where is it coming from? And then just outlining that for people so they can follow along with my thought processes.
Wow. Man, that might be the quote of the day right there. It's important to put my natural way of being to the side sometimes. Um, that's good, Rob. That's really good. And I think it's a key to successful relationships. You know,
Hmm.
your business and your personal work together. I've been reflecting on myself lately, like, hey, man, you know, show me my blind spots in my business. Show
Hmm.
me my blind spots in myself. Asking those are the same questions. If I can find out where I'm lacking or what process is missing in my business, I can probably turn around and find one of those same inconsistencies in
Yeah.
myself. So I was just having a conversation. You know, it gets really lonely the higher you go up in leadership because what's required of you becomes more difficult. And a lot of people, when you hit your head on a stress ceiling, I forgot where I heard this. You hit your head on the stress ceiling, and they say, "Okay, that's enough.
Hmm.
This level right here, that's good." And when you decide that you're going to stop, that means you stop that like yearning and that drive to continue to develop. There's some kind of don't get me wrong. I feel crazy sometimes why I do what I do. Like Trey, it ain't necessary. Like you can get your check every 2 weeks, every month, but you don't gotta do all this. You don't gotta work so hard. But I'm driven to be a better version of myself and serve the people that I serve. Where does that land with you?
Oh, that's 100%. I'm with you. I A couple things came to mind when you were talking. One, I just recently watched that Shirley Chisholm movie,
Okay, okay.
and it was a comment on there about like asking her like, "Are you crazy?" And somebody's like, "Well, you got to be crazy if you think you're gonna change the world. You have to push the envelope a little bit." And two more things. One, I think your personal life and your professional life are very aligned. One cannot be way off, and you excel in the other. And if that does happen, it's temporary or it's false. Like, it all comes together at some point, at some time. So you have to think about these two things together. And then the third thing is it is important to take a step back, knowing when you hit your head on that stress ceiling. I'm good for you're not gonna hear from me for this week. It don't happen a lot, but when I get there and I recharge and I
Yeah.
come back better. You can work through some stress, but also that's a sign. Listen to your body, listen to your mind, to your heart. Take that step back as long as you are actually disconnecting, and then at least for me, disconnect, then reflect, and then I can jump back into it.
Rob, man, you look. I didn't know you were so quotable, man. This is you got some things here. If your personal and professional on a line, it's either temporary or it's false. That is a banger, sir. Put it on a shirt. That's good. And then I want to go with you too in terms of taking a step back. So that's wonderful with the stress ceiling, and I'm so glad you added that context. That it's good to step back and to reflect. And I think that's I kind of put things on a 10-point scale. I've been burnt out in my life. The way I put it on my scale of well-being, of personal wellness, if I'm at a 10, I'm burnt out, or I'm going to be burnt out. So I found that in my life, I do good at about a 7. If I'm working at a 7, I can keep up with both of my worlds, and I can operate at a good clip. Put me at that 8, I got about 3 months, and it's coming crashing down.
I hear you.
But I think too, and I'm gonna pass it back to you. I box now, so I went boxing for I do one-on-ones and I do whole classes. I went to a one-on-one, Robin. I've gotten a couple fights in my life, but I ain't never really just like went in for like an hour throwing. Rob, I threw throwing punches for about an hour. my back has been locked up for like a week and a half. I might have slipped a disc. I
I hear
might have
you.
messed up, man. And I want to keep going, but there's two things. One, I was doing too much. I can go 0 to 50, but now I need to find more gears between 50 and 100
Mhm.
because you can't just go 50 to 100. You're doing too much. But I have to listen to myself to say, hey, Trey, that was too much stress on your body. You want to work out, but you need to sit down for a
Yep.
week and a week and a half until you're ready to roll. And Trey, you probably need to go to the doctor because my back don't feel good. But that's part of that stress ceiling and kind of breaking through that. So it's a double edged sword to where you got to hit your head on the ceiling, right? But then you got to be thoughtful enough to reflect on why did I hit this ceiling and how do I go through it or around it? What's my best bet?
Mhm.
Um, that's good. My last question for you, Rob, and I'm gonna let you get back to your personal life as well. When you think about that, my personal and my professional should work together, not against each other. How does how does those things work together for you? In terms, we looked at your adaptive style and we saw how you show up at work. I guess talk to me a little bit about how your strengths show up as a dad, as a husband, as a man.
Yeah, a big part of what I do in my personal life, particularly related to my family, is thinking about the long term, like where we're going as a family, what's important to us as a family. And like I said, I'm pretty laid back in my day to day life, so I'm not always making a plan about what we're about to do this weekend or where we're about to go to dinner or something like that. But I'm making sure we're good overall, and then balancing that with like understanding what my wife has going on personally, professionally, what my daughter has going on personally or in school, to make sure that we're all good and like balancing all those things. For example, today at about 5:30, my daughter has an engineering camp, and she usually goes to after school. So thinking about the fact that my wife has a couple of meetings this afternoon, I have this call, then something else. It just makes sense for my daughter not to be in after school today because the engineering camp is so important to her. Our What we got going on professionally is important to us. So sometimes you just got to make those choices and sacrifices for what's better. Yeah, she's missing a fun after school thing for a couple hours, but because of that, we get to do what's most important right now. Now, if this was some webinar that like looked kind of interesting, I can miss that for her after school thing. But it's all about
Right.
prioritizing and keeping all the pieces together so we can roll in the right
Mm,
direction as a
mm,
team.
mm, mm. This is good, Rob. This is good, Rob. This is a wonderful way to kind of kick things off and to really highlight your everyday strengths. I think that there's skills that we use every day, whether they're personal or professional, that show up and that they change people's life. And I think this is an example of, specifically finding a passion and pursuing it in terms of a nonprofit. It doesn't always look that way. The same strengths that you have as a nonprofit leader were the same strengths as a school leader, were the same strengths in other places. And over time, we find places to make sure that those strengths have places to prosper and then leverage them so that the rest of our team can use their strengths as well. Rob, where can the people find you? How can they keep up with He Is Me?
You can go straight to our website, heisme.org. You can find me on LinkedIn, Robert J. Hendricks III. We didn't talk much about the other work I do outside of He Is Me, but also do some work in like different types of consulting work, supporting schools and business leaders, new entrepreneurs. So if that's your realm, we can go in that direction too. But I'm everywhere. I'm out there, social media. You can find me.
I love it. I love it, man. Thank you, sir. And thank y'all so much for listening. We'll get this episode out to you. You can also check out SELeducators.com to learn more about our strengths based training for leaders and teams. We'll see you next time on Everyday Strengths.